And I'd like to call to order the Town of Hilton Head Island Finance and Administrative Committee meeting of September 20th, 2022. Krista, are we in compliance with FOIA?
Yes, sir, we are.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, we are.
Would you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Harkins?
Here.
Mr. Stanford will be here soon, and Mr. Lennox?
Here.
All present.
We have minutes of August 16th, 2022, which was a good meeting and good job in the minutes, Krista. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions?
Move for approval. Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Krista, do we have an appearance by any citizens?
Yes, sir, we do. We had Mr. Skip Hoagland signed up to address council or the committee today. But I do not see him, sir, so that would conclude appearance by citizens.
Any others?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. We have 3 agenda items on new business. The first is a report from the Community Foundation of the Low Country pertaining to the American Rescue Plan Act 2021 grants. Mr. Rearman, good to see you again.
Nice to see you all. Thank you. Good morning. My colleague Debbie Cahoon and I are honored to be here to give you an update on the work of the committee that handled the ARPA distributions. My remarks are going to be general, and then Debbie's going to have more specifics for you on this latest round. I believe you all have received a report of all the funding and as well as a summary of the entire $1 million that has now been awarded. I first want to thank the council for making the commitment early on to allocate a portion of the ARPA funds available to the town to be able to put out into the community through our nonprofit partners. As I mentioned, I think on my first visit before this committee, the town of Hilton Head was the first municipality in the state of South Carolina to do so, and it has been used in other communities around the state to say, look what they did, and there's opportunity. So it's something I think you all should be proud of. You responded quickly at a time when the needs were great instead of waiting a year or two down the road to figure out what to do with it. So that is appreciated. The second thank you goes to our nonprofit partners, because they're the ones that are in the trenches every day working with people who have challenges and need assistance. And they have responded in tremendous ways, not only through just the ARPA funds, but over the last 2.5 years since the pandemic hit our country. Many of them have had to re-engineer how they operate, and at a time when the demand was perhaps the greatest in their histories in terms of needs, many of the organizations lost core volunteer base that was essential to the work, and they've had to figure out workarounds so that the work could continue. So we're thankful for that. And then the third group I'd like to thank was the committee. As you know, we structured this with an advisory committee made up of a few representatives of the Foundation's board as well as some community members. So specifically, I'd like to thank Peaches Peterson, who's a board member of the Foundation who served as chair of this advisory committee, Galen Miller, Sheila Mahoney, Jerry Farron, Herb Ford, Doug Fletcher, and of course John Troyer representing the town. That group put in a tremendous amount of time and thought in the process. They reviewed all the applications that came through our portal. They scored those applications, and then they met to deliberate about what was the best decision to impact the community. So as I mentioned, as of a week or so ago, the $1 million that had been committed has now been committed and has been awarded and in the hands of the nonprofits doing the work. This happened over 3 grant cycles that started earlier this year, and the most recent grant cycle, Debbie will talk to you in a minute about that. In addition to the money going out, which is great to help our neighbors in need, some other great things happened as a result of this. The first is some of these nonprofits were able to leverage the ARPA funds for additional contributions to further their mission and to help other people. So everyone likes a return on the investment, and you certainly should be pleased with that. The other thing that's very exciting is a number of new collaborations have happened, and Debbie's going to talk in more detail about a session that she hosted just a couple of weeks ago. There have been 2 or 3 of those now, where all of the funded members had the opportunity to come together to share what they were doing, look for additional partnerships, and some exciting things have started to spawn out of that. I just want to say that these public-private partnerships are a best practice. And again, the foundation is honored to have been a partner with the town on this, as well as other partnerships in the past. Unrelated to the ARPA process, you may be aware of the fact that the town recently was informed that because of the process that the town had back in 2020 in partnership with the foundation with the CBDG HUD money for COVID relief, because that was done efficiently and the reports were well done, the town has been awarded an additional $102,000 from money from other communities that didn't spend it. That money is coming back into this community and will be distributed back out to organizations. So these types of public-private partnerships can serve our community extremely well, and we've been honored to be a partner in this. I'm going to turn it over to Debbie, and she's got some more specific information on this latest round and some additional insights.
Thank you. I want to join Scott in thanking the town of Hilton Head for carving out a portion of the American Rescue Plan Act funds to distribute back into nonprofit organizations who are serving the community members who need it the most as they face the increasing effects of the after effects of COVID, or increasing needs as the after effect. Just to remind you, this partnership started October of 2021. It was very important to the Community Foundation from the very beginning that we identified the nonprofits that we knew would meet the criteria for funding as providing services that were outlined in the guidelines. I emailed each of those organizations. Our communications staff also posted information on social media and on our website. They coordinated with the communication staff from the town for press releases and for the town social media as well. Through the work of the Hilton Head Island ARPA/SLFRF COVID-19 committee, as Scott said, $1 million has been distributed to nonprofit agencies who are serving the needs of the community. Final reports are due on June 30th, so there's a lot of work that has to be done with that last $500,000 between now and then. Since those final decisions were made last month, I did have the privilege of meeting with representatives from 15 of the 20 organizations that received funding. We brought them into the Community Foundation and we asked them to share their projects with each other. Many of them already collaborate. They shared their collaborations and they shared additional opportunities to collaborate. So it was a wonderful experience, wonderful for me to see. Through this fund, as you'll see on the report that you have, over the last 11 months, 12% of the funds were awarded to agencies that provide child care or after-school tutoring. 22% was awarded to agencies working in the health or mental health space. 22% was awarded to agencies responding to emergency housing relief. 44 was awarded to agencies who are responding to food insecurity. That need, as I'm sure you all know, is increasing with the rising cost of food and inflation as an after effect of COVID and all that's going on in the world today. The agencies that I met with shared their needs they may have and other opportunities that they had. We had Mental Health America asked for the folks who are working with individuals to help identify those who could benefit from the scholarships that they had received. There was discussions between the Penn Ministry at First Presbyterian Church and Sandalwood about responding to homeless individuals who they're encountering now. So it was a great conversation, and I learned a lot. The organizations learned a lot. They left the foundation with a directory of all of those who are providing services, what services they're providing, and contact information so that they can continue to work together. Before the agencies left, they reminded me, and so I'll remind you, that we need to consider this support as critical to the whole individual who receives it, not just limited to the type of support that the individual receives. For instance, if individuals are receiving food from Sandalwood, that frees up other resources so that they can pay their rent. If they're receiving rental assistance, maybe they can afford to pay a medical bill or child care. So we need to remember that all of this is crucial to the vulnerable population right now in Hilton Head who is has the most negative impact by all that's going on. I want to thank you again for all that you are doing for the community, and I want to thank the town for choosing the Community Foundation to partner with this in this effort. Thank you.
Debbie and Scott, when we initiated this process to distribute the ARPA funds, enlisting your support and your experience, we really didn't know what to expect. I can say personally, I never expected this kind of success. I couldn't be more pleased with the way you handled it, and the leverage and the collaboration is a byproduct that we need to keep going.
Thank you.
Open it up for comments to the committee.
You certainly have had a tremendous multiplier effect throughout the community, and I think that speaks well to your community vision, and it speaks well to your involvement as partners with other charitable organizations in the community. So we just say thank you. You're wonderful stewards of public resources.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know that we chose the right organization to partner with the town to manage this project, and so I salute you for doing such an outstanding job. The spread of these funds over different needs seems to make so much sense the way you divided that up. You understand those needs certainly much better than we do, and so you were able to use your knowledge and experience with this in making it better. I never anticipated that there would be the additional collaboration between these agencies as a result of that, and bringing them together in a room for a meeting like that did nothing better than putting the people together so that they knew each other's faces if they didn't know each other's faces before. And so that's just outstanding. So it really does feel good that we did something right in that we hired the right partner. So thank you for the great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for your efforts. I kind of describe this as community wellness. I mean, there are a lot of different pieces to that, right? The town of Hilton Head, as a government entity, does not have a department to fill those gaps, right? So we appreciate that the Community Foundation of Low Country has been able to pull together and move the needle. I got a couple of thought-provoking questions.
Okay, great.
The first one is the need gone?
No. I can.
Okay. The second one is, throughout the conversations with the nonprofits that are filling those gaps, has there been I guess a long-term plan to continue that collaboration through the Community Foundation back to us so that we are well aware as to, number one, direction, number two, need. Our community qualifies for community block grants, And often, in my humble opinion, we're not necessarily sure how to spend them, okay? And the fact that other communities struggle with that, but we are now an example, so much so that you're being awarded another 102 grand. I think that that's an opportunity that maybe we can shift how we're using our community block grant funding, okay? There's from an environmental, social standpoint, there's monies out there. There's just so many different funding sources that could help the cause that I'm not sure we're leveraging because of this disconnect between the nonprofits and the municipality. So I'm just curious of your thoughts on that.
That's a great point, and know that we feel that one of the roles, central roles of the mission of the foundation is to be a convener, particularly around local community issues. And so we feel as though there's more we can do to bring people around. This opportunity through the ARPA funding was a wonderful example and a reason to get everyone around the table, because they were all focused on kind of a short-term issue. There are a lot of other opportunities to do convenings around issues. We actually are partnering with the United Way in October and doing a session on the need for male mentoring for young boys. That's going to be out at Palmetto Electric, and we've invited about 55 institutions to be together to find out where people have a common interest in what can we do for young boys and young men to have more successful outcomes. So the foundation is very open to being a partner, and I don't know what the best avenue for us as we learn of these things to communicate that back to the town, but know that we stand ready to be a partner. And we've had a number of nonprofits who've said, would you convene around a particular issue? And we feel like we have the resources to help do that. So thank you for that point.
Mr. Chair, you've done such a great job with leading us through these discussions, and I know you're on your way out. And I'm making this comment not just for my colleagues here, but for senior staff, particularly Mr. Troyer, as we move forward with the transition into new finance committee, whatever that looks like. I think that a standing agenda item, maybe once a quarter, is us having conversations with Mr. Whitman as to the direction, okay? I view this no different than recreation here on Hilton Head. We don't have a recreation department, but we have the Island Rec Center that is handling that business for us. And you are handling the community wellness business for us, and we need to continue the dialogue so we're well abreast and able to make sound decisions based on your knowledge. So I just ask that we continue the conversation.
Thank you. We welcome that.
Scott and Debbie, I noticed that in the second tranche, there were 8 applications, 6 approvals, and 2 were declined.
Right.
Were they declined because they didn't qualify, or was it a matter of funding?
One of the agencies did not qualify. Let me go back and look at the second one that didn't receive.
Debbie, it's not necessary. Where
Okay.
I'm going with this is the 102,000 that is coming back in
Right.
to the town and will come to you for distribution. Is it your intent to circle back to the applications that were declined or have new applications submitted?
ARPA, they can only go to organizations who serve the majority of low to moderate income. One of the organizations, the one that was declined because it was not eligible, was Low Country Autism Foundation. The project was located in Bluffton primarily, and it didn't quite meet the ARPA requirements. It will not meet the CDBG because they serve autistic individuals regardless of their income level, so they wouldn't quite meet that same bracket. So,
Scott, please express to Peaches Peterson and her committee our sincere appreciation for the hard work that they've done. I couldn't be more confident in the decisions and the allocation of these funds.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your service. Thank you.
Thank you.
New business, agenda item 2, consideration of the resolution of the town of Hilton Head Island authorizing the execution of an agreement with Moulton and Jenkins LLC for the financial audit services for fiscal years ending June 30th, 2023, John, through June 30th, 2027. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, currently under contract is Green Finney. They are on their 5th year of a 5-year contract, and it was originally 4 years with 1-year extension, which Town Council approved this year. As we looked at the end of Green Finney's term, we went out to proposals and sought bids for the audit services to satisfy the state law and satisfy the town code. Through the proposal process, we received applications. We reviewed the applications. It was reviewed by a committee of staff and our chair who participated in those reviews. And based on those reviews, as far as the cost and now we make the recommendation that this contract be awarded. And so auditors, they don't work for staff, they don't work for town managers, they work for town council. And so this is town council's contract. And we would recommend.
I would comment, since I participated in this committee, that the short list was Green Finney and M&L. And Green Finney's response to the RFP was outstanding. And M&J, excuse me, was even more outstanding. And I think the primary difference or differentiator was the level of experience in local and municipal government that M&J had versus Green Finney. And that said, we were satisfied with the performance of Green Finney over the past 5 years, but I think this really gives us the opportunity to take it to another level. Question for John.
The selection, the recommendation for the selection is not based just upon expense, on the fees.
No.
Rather, it is based upon the professional qualifications, the background of this particular firm, and their ability to provide us with the data that we need to move forward.
Yeah, it was a professional services proposal, and so we wanted to emphasize experience and similarly situated clients, and so local governments who would have, some of the same operations that we do, and so that this kind of audit would be their expertise, and that's part of what we found through the evaluations, was that Malden and Jenkins really focuses on local governments.
Thank you.
And so we also looked at the experience of the staff and of the whole firm and the staff who's going to be assigned to this audit.
Thank you. Good question. Good comment. Others?
I would just say that I think we've been well served by the firm that you mentioned for the past several years. I think we should acknowledge our appreciation for their professionalism and product, and move forward to accept M&J as our auditor.
And Green Finney will make one more report back to town council, and so we have the opportunity for that coming up probably early December-ish.
Has to be early.
Yeah.
Before I ask for public comment, I'd ask the committee for a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded. And any comment from the public on the proposed resolution? If none, I'll bring it back to the dais. Any further discussion from the committee? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. It is unanimous. Krista, thank you. Last new business item is 2-month financial update. I notice the lights are on. I assume the bills are paid.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, they are, and so we can report that. Great. First 2 months, and so our fiscal year starts July 1st, and these numbers are August 31st numbers for the most part. Again, I like to start this way, that the town continues to monitor revenues. We kind of started these financial reports because we were worried about revenues, and it kind of evolved a little bit into kind of a framework to facilitate some financial discussions as well. But we continue to do that, continue to control expenditures, and it helps us to be as nimble as possible and responsive as possible. But the early report is so far so good, but we're just getting started. Again, Town Council has had the foresight to build reserves, diversify revenue streams, and invest in the island, and all of those things have helped to put us on firm financial footing. For August, we'll move on. General fund revenues, these are just individual months. July, you can see 2023 is better than the last 4 years. August is not as good as last year, but just note that in 2022 August, we had one off-schedule large payment from the state for business license, and I think we will see later in the year that was more of a timing difference than anything else. And so it's not that 2022 was so great, but it was just earlier in the year than what we would usually expect. And so if you look at without that one large 2022, our 2023 numbers have a good start for the year. Year to date, it's kind of the similar picture. July, we're better than the last 4 years. August, not quite as good as last year, but better than the 3 before. And that positive anomaly, that will offset as the year goes forward, is what we expect. This just shows a chart of revenues by month for the whole year. You can see July and August in relation to September to June, so there's a long way to go. Every single month is important, but there's a lot of very important months to come. Here's our normal sample preview, and it's a mixed bag. It's really, you can see TIF is down 17, local aid tax is up 15, real estate transfer fee is down 31, beach is up 15, electric franchise fee is up 1, although road usage fee is down 98. I mean, it's all over the board. And so I think that's my emphasis, is that this early in the year, small changes seem like really big, and this will kind of settle down as we get a little more history into the year. And so, however, if you take out that one large payment from MASC or the state business license, then we're within 4% of last year, and we do think that's a timing difference. We are seeing the rate increases affecting real estate transfer fees. We'll talk a little bit more about that coming up. A couple other things that happened as well. If you look forward, road usage fee, that was paused by town council, and so we're not collecting. And so if you take out just those 3 things, business license, road usage fee, and real estate transfer fee, we're up. And so this is a really odd mix that we're seeing so far. And so I would just say that the best thing we can do is wait and see. Property taxes, you can see the last couple of years at 15 million, 16 million, net year to date, 109,000. So it's really early in the year to get that. It's primarily taxes on vehicles until the bills, we expect those to go out in October. Here's a little bit more on a real estate transfer fee. The blue is the 23, green is 22, and the gray is 21. And so the last couple of years have been extremely good for the real estate transfer fee. And what we're seeing in August is kind of a little bit more back to normal, but it feels less because the last 2 years were so great.
And John, if you will, comment on what you have built into the fiscal 23 budget. Is it the anomaly of 22 and 21, or is it a more realistic real estate transfer fee.
And we'll talk more about that. And really, the real estate transfer fee is kind of independent from the budget because town council just approves that as they approve the projects. And so it's approving approved uses within the allowable uses of the real estate transfer fee.
And I think it's appropriate to say at this point that from the most recent MASC advocacy meeting, they made it very clear that real estate transfer fee and business license issues are on the General Assembly's mind for the upcoming session. So we'll have to watch that very, very closely.
Yes, we'll want to pay very close attention. Year-to-date real estate transfer fee, if you go back to 2019, 2020, that was a more normal year, and so the 2 years after that were just really good. And so our year-to-date, 2023, is substantially better than a normal year. And it's just that we're not quite as good as the last couple. Business licenses, this is no new numbers because it's so early in the year, but I think I want to just emphasize with Mr. Lennox is that we want to certainly pay attention to the state, and the state has such an influence over how we have to operate. And so business licenses have been good, and we hope that that continues. It is a good barometer of our economy on the island. And there's a piece, this just breaks out our business licenses between local and state collected through MASC business licenses and the mix. And we'll get back into this as we progress into the year. And I just wanted to keep this slide in there to be a reminder to me to keep talking about that and keep watching it because it's important. Here's our numbers from last year. And so it was a really strong collection year for business licenses. General fund expending, we flip over to the spending side. July, we're a little bit under what we might expect, and August is about normal. And so I would point out that our August spending right at $4 million is right at our annual budget of 48 million. So you multiply by 12 and we're right on the money. There is some seasonality to that, and so we've got a number of things that are pay once a year, pay quarterly, and so in different seasons, and so we'll certainly want to keep a close eye on that, but it's about where we would expect. Year to date, the same thing. July is normally a little bit lower on the spending side as we get the year started, and then August is more of a normal year. And so if our year-to-date spending is 6.8 million and we expected it could be as much as 8, then I think we're right on track. And know that June, by the time we get to June, is going to be a little bit higher month as we include our accruals. There's some differences here that you will see. There's a little shift in personnel. You can look at, for instance, you look at the largest change here. Town council wanted to make an additional emphasis on fire rescue pay, and so we're seeing that that's being implemented and has been implemented, and so it's higher than last year. I think that will moderate a little bit as we get forward. The Sheriff and Beach Services, that's also a higher number, but that's just because there's an additional emphasis on the beach ambassadors and putting those efforts to work more so this year than last year, and you're seeing that. But at 11.4%, I think this is early, and I think it's going to moderate a little bit as we go. If we compare this to budget and say, okay, how does that compare to budget? We are 16.7% through the year, and we have spent 14% of our budget. And so we're tracking right like we should. The only one that is above that 16.7% is townwide, and townwide we pay our property taxes in July right off the bat for the whole year. And so that's 100% spending in a part of that townwide. And so otherwise, I think we're comfortably where we would expect to be on our spending side. Just a reminder, this is old numbers, but last year we ended up spending 98.7% of budget on general fund, debt service 99.9%, and stormwater 86%. So just give you a little bit of history. General fund activity, this is, again, just some year-end numbers, but we ended up with 47 million. So Mr. Lennox was asking, how did we budget? And so we collected an actual in general fund, 47 million. We budgeted 48 for the new year. Okay. And then in the past year, we put back, and that was always Mr. Brown's question, is that, okay, are we going to be able to put back some money into the general fund balance? And it's $3 million. Debt service, we're spending at 22.5. That's a little bit ahead of what we would expect, but part of that is, and the number one reason is we have a beach bond that's due on August the 1st, and so when we planned out that debt payment, that we just wanted to get the first of the quarterly beach fee collections in July, and we use those funds to make the debt payment. Most of our principal payments are due in March, April, and May after property taxes are due. And so our beach fee bond payment has been made for the year for the principal, but the other ones will come later in the year. It's right where we expect. Stormwater, again, stormwater revenue matches our property tax collections, and so it's lagging behind for the first 6 months. And you can see expenditures. And so we would expect that we would show a deficit for the first 6 months, and then in the second half of the year to be a surplus until the end of the year. CIP, you'll see, this is just looking back to last year, but I did want to put this in here because we're expecting to move forward on a budget amendment, and the budget amendment really is going to focus for our CIP just a different mixture of our, when we built the budget with an expectation of some carry forward, and that now that we have our actual numbers in for June 30th, the mixture of projects is just a little bit different. And so we'll come back to town council and seek permission through a budget ordinance just to reset those back to those original project amounts. And so we're not looking to change projects, but we are looking to just make our actuals to be the same as the expected.
John, this is a good slide to talk about CIP and the duration of a project. You're carrying 22 million forward. You're planning for 9.9, almost $10 million. And on average, year over year, that 10 to 11 to 12 million is what we estimate in CIP.
Yes, and so yes, it's a really good measure, and what is in there for this year's CIP, it's 22 million in carry forward plus 23 million in new projects, and so even on a good year, we would spend $15 million. Then we've got a lot in the queue.
So it would take you 2 or 3 years to catch up.
Yes. Yes, and so our expectation is that they're full speed ahead, and you'll hear reports from Jennifer Ray about the number of different things that they're doing, but they are full speed ahead and trying to do as much of that $45 million as possible just to make those investments in the island. But it will take some time, and so our expectation is 2 at best and probably 3 years to do all of that. But it doesn't preclude us from doing, again, capital planning for what comes behind that, but just knows that to work through the backlog of projects, it's going to take a little bit of time, yes.
But if we, I don't mean to say, but if we continue to put $10 million a year into new CIP projects will never fully catch up.
No.
It's always going to be a rolling 3-year
Yes.
schedule. Okay.
To that point, if I may, when you're looking at the CIP, can you break out what those dollars are being used for in terms of 2 buckets? 1, improving what we have, and 2, building something new?
I'll make a note of that. Yes, it's,
I think that would be important because you don't want to sit there and feel good when you have an asset that's really hitting almost towards total depreciation.
Sean's going to.
Sean Colin, Assistant Town Manager. Ms. Harkins, very good question. Yes, the way the CIP is set up, there is new capital, new projects with new capital, and then there's maintenance, upgrades, park upgrades, pathway upgrades that we have separated and can report on. Yes, so it's things that are maintaining and upgrading existing facilities along with the new capital expenses that we will execute with council and town manager support.
There's more detail on the CIP than any other line item we have in the budget. And the funding goes all the way out for 10 years. So if you want that, I think there's places to get that.
Right. I was just thinking for new people coming on board, that
Yep.
would.
And Jennifer Ray did a really good job with the end-to-end capital program process with planning, design, construction drawings, permitting, those approvals, and then to get into where we are ready to break ground. So it's a 2 or 3 process to go through that, and that's why we look at it as a program and not necessarily 1-year capital plan, so, okay.
One last question. I'm not sure if this is for you, John, or for Jocelyn, but as you look at real estate values on the island, and someone were to ask the question, are they holding, are they dropping, or are they increasing? What would be the indice that you would most likely use to answer that question, or is there more than one? Certainly like real estate transfer fee, that could be a surrogate measure.
Yeah, the transfer fee is based on transactions, and so I defer to the expert here.
In other words, someone flies in here and says they're going to put $100,000 invest in Hilton Head, and they ask the question, can you demonstrate that asset will grow in value, hold, or it could be precarious and it may decline?
I would rather get back to you on that.
All right, no, that's fine.
And answer and
Because
information on that.
we're putting out the sign, we're open for business, not every kind of business, but we're open. And how can we show that our portfolio is moving in this way, holding, or going down?
John, does the Beaufort County have an ongoing live figure of what the town of Hilton Head Island tax duplicate is? If
We'll get her-
that would address what Bill's talking about.
It does, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. The county publishes the duplicate once a month, and so we can track that through once a month. And I think that might be a way to do that is to look to see how, and we can do that, is that we can come back and report back what's on Beaufort County's total value for the island.
In between assessments, that would be meaningful.
Yeah, I wanted to take Councilman Hawkins' thought just a little bit further, John, and I appreciate taking that question on, but I'm going to throw another one at you also to think about. It just goes back to this ongoing discussion. I think reporting on the real estate transfer fee and even the value comparison could be somewhat of a lag to what's on the ground currently. And I think the amount of listings that are out there, how many knocks on doors that the realtors are getting, those all kind of tell the real story as to how we are performing on a daily basis, right? And I think that's important for us to have a mechanism to gather that information as we start to build future budgets. You mentioned normalcy. I think we're still trying to figure out what normalcy is, right? And the not just the transfer fee, but just the way that real estate affects our economy on Hilton Head overall. I think it's important to understand what's going on the ground. So the more that we can do to offer that information here live to us, I think we'll be better off as far as making decisions, not just around real estate transfer fee, but other line items in our budget also, because it's all related.
I agree, yes.
Tom, if I might, I have a comment also about CIP. When we went into the pandemic, we froze CIP expenditures because we didn't know what the pandemic was going to do. That resulted in the buildup of considerable funds available for CIP, which is the reason that the budget has been increased significantly to provide for that. But the fact that we have $32 million budgeted, we can't spend that money all in one year. There's not enough of us to go around, and we want to make sure these projects are done right. And so we are relying on Jennifer and you to manage these funds so that we're expending them appropriately, and I know that we will. So I look forward to many of the significant CIP projects that are on the horizon for us. I participated in a public meeting in Port Royal recently, and there was a concern about how we were going to be able to pay for these park projects. And there was a concern about tax increases. And I said, I don't anticipate a tax increase. Rather, what the council has done and what the town has done is we stopped CIP projects a few years ago. So now we have money in the bank to spend this. And so while Mid-Island Tract, for example, will be a very expensive undertaking, it won't be funded through a tax increase. And there was great relief in the public about that. So it's important that this information gets out so that people do understand that. And so, you know, some sort of report from you on the town website concerning these issues could be very beneficial in making sure the public is aware. I don't think they sign into our meetings like this very often. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. And I would also point to, on the town's website, Jennifer's group puts a lot of effort into updates on CIP projects. And so, like Sean had addressed, is that you can know much more detail and where each one of the projects stands as far as through the life cycle of the project.
I will break protocol. Jocelyn, would you like to add something?
I just wanted, Jocelyn Steiger, for the record, from the Hilton Head Area Realtors, just wanted to let you know that we do have updated and very thorough market reports that we put out the 15th of every month, right around the 15th. Sometimes it's a few days later. They break down all transactions, not only by municipality in our region, but by neighborhood. They're very thorough, and I offer you those as a resource, either by sending them to you all, or if John's interested, or you also can obtain them on our website without a problem. But there's a lot of really good information there that gives you a snapshot of transactions where they're happening.
Good.
Across the island.
Good, thank you.
And off island.
We'll do it. John, that was an extended discussion of CIP. Feel free to move on.
Oh, that's great. You know, I look at this as just kind of a framework to have a discussion, and what's important to you is important to me. Beach fee, we're better than the last several years, so beach fees are up. We can be glad about that. You can kind of see the trends, and so we're good there. Hospitality is up compared to the last several years, and that's a good report. Year to date, it's going to be the same as just the 1 month. And just to know, if you look at July, it's basically zero. What we collect in July is really related to June 30th, and so through the accrual process, we push it all back into June 30th numbers, and that's why you say, well, why didn't you collect anything in July? Well, it gets counted for June, and then we catch up at the end of the year.
John, on the hospitality tax, can we compare ourselves to other municipalities in South Carolina in terms of what our hospitality tax is in comparison to others?
That would be a really
I'm asking
good,
that, but it would be helpful.
good analysis, and I think that would be helpful information. I'll see if I can put together a little bit of information, some
Are
comparison.
all hospitality taxes created equal? Do all municipalities have the same percent, or do they differ?
No, and this is all local option, and so it's jurisdiction by jurisdiction.
So that may be the problem. We have 2% and somebody else has 1%.
Right, so if we had 2 and we wanted to go to 3, is that a decision we can make?
It's going to be guided by state law, and so we want to seek counsel on that.
Be interesting to know that.
Okay, thank you.
Just, I want to follow, I'm gonna make sure that I'm understanding Mr. Hawkins' thought here. Are you asking for comparison of other municipalities so that we can know where we stand competitively to one degree, and also us to have better information as we consider maybe a potential increase?
You get an A.
And also the potential use of those funds.
Okay.
I could get it out.
Okay, and so this is our same group, and these are the same numbers, but full year though, and I always think this is important, so this was reported last time, but I like to talk about the totals in the last 4 years of this just sampling. It's not all our revenue, but it's our representative sample that we have been using to kind of keep our finger on the pulse of our revenues and on our economy. You can see from 19 to 20, the first year of COVID, our total revenues for this group went down, but then they bounced back nicely in 21 and 22. And so to come back to what's 23 going to be like? And I think that's, the jury is out. It's still early, but we'll keep a close eye on it. But we can look back and say 21 was an excellent year, 22 is an excellent year, and we'll keep our eyes on 23.
Stormwater is in here.
It is. Yeah, and you can see stormwater is probably the most stable revenue line item of the mix. Yes.
This slide, really, notwithstanding expense control, is the most important slide to the Finance Committee, because this, more than anything else you display, shows trends in revenue.
And I totally agree with Councilman Lennox here, John, and as we move into further reporting down the road, I like the fact that you are still including 2019. 2019 was for the environment that we were in, was a really good year.
Yeah.
Okay. So as we move further, I think we need to keep that 2019 in there so we stay relative. Okay. The print may get a little smaller, but I think it's important that we have it there.
I try to make these reasonable, but thank you.
So 2020, by definition, represents a recession.
Yeah,
Increasing revenues.
Just from my memory is that up until through February, we were reporting a really good year in 2020 until it stopped.
But then March, April, May
Right.
were off, June was back up.
Yeah.
Good slide, John.
And this is just another version of that. And again, I want to say thank you to the revenue services people in the finance department. They're doing a bang-up job in collecting, and so they're working every single day to make sure we get what we're supposed to get. Expenditure control, back to Mr. Stanford's. We always have to look at it. Okay, what if revenue doesn't come in like we expect or hope? What measures can we take? And so here's our budget. Our debt burden is modest, and so that helps us. And yeah, here we go, if we need to. And so 2023, we're off to a good start. Revenue strength continues. I think we'll see positive numbers on there, but probably not as good as the last couple of years. Town operations were within budget. Capital plan is moving forward. Thank you, Sean, for that update as well. We are reducing debt. Let me talk a little bit about that. I know our chair will be interested, but our book of work, our book of debt that we have as a town is 100% fixed rate. And so as the Federal Reserve changes interest rates, our debt payments are the same. And so we don't have an interest rate risk there. And so I think that will serve the town very well. On the investment side, we are working to do two things. One, to make sure that we're fully invested appropriately. There's limits within state law and town code what we can invest in, but we want to get fully invested. And so we have spent a good deal of effort to make sure that we're fully invested in that, and that we are monitoring the raise in interest rates, and so we're responding. And so I don't have a slide up here, but just know that through August, we have collected more interest earnings than we did all of last year. And so we were able to take advantage of the raise in interest rates. We don't try to do any kind of interest rate. We don't want to take interest rate risks. And so we basically ladder our investments by month as we can afford to put money aside. But as these mature, we're maturing from 12 basis points, 15 basis points into 2 and 3%. And so we're going to see positive numbers on interest earnings this year.
I had just some thoughts on the reducing debt, John. When you put up the pie chart, I think it was like 19 million, but the piece of the pie is what's getting my attention, okay? And I'm making an assumption that the closer and closer we get to 2024 budgeting cycle, that piece of the pie is going to shrink.
Yeah, the one large one that's going to come off is that this year in 2023 is the last year of the debt for the hurricane response. So the $5 million for 5 years, I scheduled that in case there was a problem with collection in the last year. And so we collected in 22 and we pay down the last payment of debt in 23. And so then our expectation is that absent any new debt, that $19 million will be less.
Sure. I just bring that to our attention because we face some challenges here in our community, and we're really having discussions around how we can diversify our revenue stream to address them. But the bonding capacity, I think, is one of this municipality's biggest strengths, okay? We start talking about how much we really bring in on a yearly basis versus what we're spending. I mean, that piece of the equation is so critical. So how we communicate that, I think is gravely important. The fact that we have been able to shrink that piece so rapidly, number one, but just the opportunity is the other piece. Messaging of that, I think, is important moving forward.
Okay, thank you. And we do some normal calculations on bonding capacity, and so I'll make a note to report back in future meetings.
As you look at that pie chart, stormwater utility will remain constant. General fund, the cost of operating the town is pretty constant. Debt service, that yellow piece of the pie is shrinking. Mm-hmm. And really, the only latitude that we really have in the budget is CIP. And that piece is increasing.
Yeah, and that's town council, not only the size, but just the priority is where town council has the levers to move.
That's where.
So is it fair to say, too, as CIP increases, looking on the horizon, access to capital, the cost?
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as and different than what we have done in the past, but basically know that we are on a cash basis. And so we are not borrowing money for this capital projects. And so that's from a community standpoint. Many jurisdictions would need to borrow money in order to do a $45 million capital plan, and we're paying as we go. Okay, and so looking ahead, we're working with Green Vinny right now. They are working on an audit, working through that normal process, and so you will see a final report, official numbers coming soon, and town council will have the opportunity to continue to monitor fiscal '23. There's a lot on the plate, and we're open for any comments or questions.
I just have one thought, not related to anything you said, but business license income is a function of a company's top line?
Mm-hmm. It is.
Okay. And I'm wondering if we could create a tool that would say if the ABC company is operating at 95% with this top line, then our business license income is X. If that company's volume of activity drops to 85% or 60%, our business license is
It's in direct proportion. And
Right,
so
right.
as their revenues go down, our revenues go down. And as their revenues go up, our revenues go up.
I'm just wondering if we could create a tool that would enable us to look at a major company here and that was operating at a 95% level 4 years ago, and you would discount it for present value, but for 4 years ago, and now because of the shortage of labor, they're operating at 75%. There's an economic penalty we're paying for that. And I'm wondering if we could get some metrics, if we could create a little formula. I don't think it would be hard to do.
Let me delve into that. Give it some thought.
All right.
Got some final comments, but just to add to Mr. Hawkins here, John, as you go through that exercise, somehow you're going to have to factor in inflation, because the top line may not always adjust based on the percentage of business, because we will charge more to get the one employee that we can get, and that then passes on to the consumer. So there's a little trick to that equation, I think, as you bring it forward to us. It may not show the decline, but the level of service as it relates to inflation also has to be put into the equation somehow. I don't know how you do that, but I'm just throwing it out there. But I wanted to thank you for your presentations continue to evolve, John. I appreciate the fact that you are now, framing it so we can have discussions around them, and you taking notes every time has continued to make this process better, and the product continues to improve. So I thank you for your efforts.
Okay, thank you.
We've been caught on the merry-go-round of road usage fee. Like many communities, we began a road usage fee, then the Supreme Court issued a decision, so we suspended collection of that fee. Now, in their wisdom, the General Assembly has changed the law back so that the road usage fee could be reimposed. I realize that would be a decision for the council to make, but I'm curious in whether or not you're aware of what other communities are doing with regard to that merry-go-round, as I refer to it.
I would need to do a little bit of homework because I don't know, but just for round numbers, it when it was in effect brought in about $1 million. And so if you think about the ability to spend another $1 million on road improvements or paving, that's what it would provide if it were assessed.
And that's certainly something that we want to maintain because the first thing you hear from citizens is potholes. So it would be interesting to get some data on that in terms of what others are doing so that council can be informed when the question is put before us. Then I want to supplement what my colleagues have said. I feel very comfortable in the reporting that we're receiving from you and your department, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
John, I would add to Glenn's comment, it has been a roller coaster as it pertains to the difference between a fee and a tax. Glenn, I think the town, through John and Mark's leadership, has taken the most conservative approach to both. By that I mean that we are accruing $2 million a year on the Beaufort County Hilton Head Island Public Safety Fee, and we have rescinded future collections on the road usage fee, which is $1 million lost. So the net effect to us in those balances that John is showing is $3 million. So there's nothing more that you can do to be more conservative. And in this issue, we feel strongly both ways.
I think we took the high road on that, and that's exactly the way this town should go.
And it's working. John, in the business license revenue, this is the first full year upcoming that we'll have the business license revenue from single short-term rental property owners.
We, through June 30th, I mean, it was effective January 1 of 2022.
So we have it.
We have it, yes.
Okay.
And so that, you see some of the numbers, and that was a nice, healthy increase of business license. Part of that is that the 1 unit exemption was not a part of the model ordinance, and so that was part of the reason for the increase.
Are you able to tell how much of the business license fee revenue is tied to short-term rentals?
We're going to find out soon.
Okay.
And so I think, and yeah, you think about things that looking ahead, we're going to find out a lot more on short-term rentals, and we're going to find a lot more about just the short-term rental permit fee will be there as well. And so town council is going to soon get a lot of information.
Any other comments for John? David? Yes, sure.
As I listened to the presentation, I focused also on the business license. And I think you and I were talking just yesterday that the trend of business on this island has tremendous impact on some of our revenues. So I question whether or not we ought to be looking at segmenting the business license in a way that we can begin to understand trends within businesses in our community, and then maybe also look at new business licenses and outgoing non-renewing businesses. And I think if we begin to track that over time, we'll have a canary in the mine kind of a situation that I think would be beneficial.
That's right on.
And then secondly, Bill, on the hospitality tax, it's my understanding that the state law caps it at 1%. And for us to be able to increase that, we would have to go back to the state legislature and have that law changed. So it's capped. I had a conversation with Senator Davis yesterday, and the idea of increasing taxes is not the most popular thing for politicians to contemplate. Thank you.
Any other comments? John, good job. Thank you very much. 2 months down and 10 to go. Is there any other business to come before the committee?
Move for adjournment.
Second,
We are adjourned.
John.